Hemiplegic migraines, aka stroke mimicking migraine. Before them I had a number of different migraines from aura to cluster. Thought I knew what to expect, stay in a dark room, plenty of food, water, sleep and meds. Sleep through aura ones, persevere with cluster etc. Then one night, I laid in my bed in uni dorms and started feeling weird. Left arm and leg felt weak and struggled to move them. Found I couldn't get up and started to panic, grabbed my phone with my right hand and tried to call one of my dorm mates. They answered but I couldn't speak, the words were right there. Right on the tip of my tongue but they just wouldn't come out. My buddy came to find me thinking I pocket dialed him and found me like that. Ambulance ride, overnight stay at the hospital with suspected stroke. After hours of panic and fear in a hospital bed, things suddenly snapped back into place with the most horrifically painful throbbing behind my eyes. It was all encompassing and felt like my head were about to burst. My eyes swelled shut and I vomited for a good 10 minutes before passing out. Sent home the next day with the diagnosis of hemiplegic migraines and a ton of pain meds. The pain lasted another 3 days where I just curled into my bed and sobbed. The weakness lasted over 2 weeks in my left side. The migraines can occur anytime and usually the result of triggers of tiredness, stress and dehydration. I know how to deal with them now but they are still the very worst pain I've ever had, each and every time. Those are terrible. I've also heard them referred to as thunderclap headaches. I went through a short period of time where I got those. It was so bad one time, my vision went all messed up, I couldn't talk, I had that about to hiccup feeling where you can't talk or swallow and it wouldn't go away. My wife thought I was legitimately having a stroke. Yep, these migraines are the absolute worst. The worst one was when during the aura a similar thing happened but with my left arm. I had the strange speech thing but it was the worst it had ever been. I couldn't remember my flatmate's best friend name and I couldn't properly convey that what was happening. I eventually had to go to the hospital. You know how usually when you throw up during a migraine a lot of the time you instantly feel 1,000 times better? This wasn't the case, it made it worse. The nausea kept coming back. Then the headache pain was so bad I had to massage my head the whole time. It only lightly dulled the pain but it made it only a tiny bit more bearable. It was the only time I felt like I was questioning my sanity if this pain would go on forever. The worst bit, though, was when I finally thought I was starting to feel better I'd get another wave of aura and another migraine on top of the current one and I just felt defeated. But then eventually it does go away and I haven't had one that bad in years and years. An abdominal infection from a surgery. Complications. Had a narcissist stepdad who refused to take me to the doctor. Said I wasn't taking enough pain medication even though I was bedridden for nearly 8 days and I was supposed to be more or less better by the 3rd. It wasn't until it was just an unimaginable pain and a high-grade fever. So I decided to just start howling and crying so he'd have to take me to the ER. I had to have a second surgery and a drainage bulb put in because the infection had created a wicked abscess. This was my worst fear growing up with a narcissistic dad. I had some kind of a leg spasm one year and it lasted a solid week, and he didn't believe me even though I was limping and had to lie down to put my socks on. He just kept believing I was faking it. Gallstones. The morning I had the first attack, I rushed to the hospital and every minute of waiting was agony. I was intentionally hitting and pinching myself to give any distraction from the pain in my sides that felt like it spiderwebbed all the way up my back. Got surgery done within 2 months and never had another attack. Oh, turf fields are gross AF and I ended up betting a staph infection while playing on one during a soccer game in my junior year of high school. It ended up being MRSA and my arm was kinda gross. Tried some antibiotics, didn't really work, and then finally got on some hefty antibiotics that worked well enough. However, they still wanted to just cut the infected skin out. Okay, it'll be safer, whatever, I'll be under anesthesia. Surgery went fine, antibiotics were working, everything is A-okay. Except I now had a hole about the size of a ping pong ball taken out of my arm near my elbow. Every morning before school and every night when I got home, my mom would have to fucking stuff wet gauze into this hole in my arm, and tear it out to replace it so the wound healed. I have never cried that hard in my life, before or since, and I had to do it every single day for like over a month. That shit hurt, man. 0-10, do not recommend, don't get MRSA. I was going to say giving birth. I had back labor as well and it feels like you're on fire. Every time I had a contraction, I would lift my body off the bed thinking it would help with the pain. It did not. My nurse told me to go straight to the epidural, but my dumbass said no, painkillers first. Once it hurt so much, I needed an epidural. I couldn't sit up on my own because I was so high on painkillers. They said if I didn't sit up on my own they wouldn't give me the epidural, so I grabbed my legs and made myself sit up. After that, I got the epidural and tried to push. In between contractions I would fall asleep because I was so exhausted from painkillers and pushing. The nurse had to wake me up when a contraction started. Eventually had to have a C-section because baby was stuck. All that pain and ended up with a C-section. What a wild ride. I had back labor with my daughter too, born Dec 2019, and it was the worst pain I've ever felt. I'm terrified of needles, so an epidural wasn't an option for me. By the end I was sobbing into my mom's arms begging to just die so I didn't have to hurt anymore. Didn't help that I was telling them I needed to push for a good half hour and they told me not to, that I couldn't possibly be dilated enough. Eventually I made them check me and what a shock, I was fully dilated. When I was a teenager I ate pretty poorly. Plenty of junk food and scarcely any vegetables. My health was seemingly fine and I was skinny, however, every now and then I'd get this very sudden immense pain in my gut, just topping my endometriosis pain, which usually ended with me stuck on toilet, sweating and eventually, 1 to 2 hours, going to the toilet. I went to the doctor, got an x-ray which showed my lower intestine was blocked up. What I ate was lacking anything that my gut could process, i.e. nutrients etc., and it clogged up. I soon changed my diet and I've been fine ever since. Sorry about poor writing, I'm lacking sleep. UTIs are so awful. From the first twinge, you know you're in for hours and hours of pain. Primarily a constant, burning need to urinate. Instead, when you go, it actually going doesn't bring relief and instead feels like you're trying to pass razor blades. I also get very sweaty and tend to vomit. When I was 15, I had 4 pretty bad UTIs in just 6 months. I honestly thought it was never going to pass and I'd have to live with it for the rest of my life. It was insane. A few times I peed purely blood. It was just this constant mixture of pain and just intense discomfort 24/7. And you constantly think about it too. And then they give you the advice to drink a lot, but you just don't want to since that means you'll only pee more. Didn't fracture anything, but F'd my low back up bad lifting too much on a deadlift a year ago. Got to the top of the movement and felt a pop. Pop. The stiffness was immediate. All I could think to do was just keep moving so it didn't stiffen up. Cut to that night, took me hours just to get off the couch. The slightest movement brought me to tears. X-rays, pain meds, and rehab later, it still stiffens. 0-10 not worth it. Dry socket after wisdom teeth removal. Painkillers didn't help, couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Absolutely agonizing. Hurt worse than breaking my kneecap, which definitely comes in second. My partner has recently gone through this. It killed me to see him in such pain and not be able to do much more than make sure we had painkillers in the house and bring him room temperature water whenever he needed some. I was surprised to scroll so far to find this. This was my number 1, but broken ribs comes close since all movement is connected to the core. Dry socket dwarfs the constant rib pain though. I just had my wisdom teeth removed last weekend and I'm taking every damn precaution. I still have gauze on the upper right side because it still feels a little sore and I'm taking 0 chances, no drinking from straws, still soft foods, saline rinse after anything I eat/drink. My cousin had dry socket and said it was worse than childbirth, and she's a tiny woman who had 2 ginormous babies with no epidural and both times had to have episiotomies. No thank you. My dentist didn't warn me about dry sockets when I had my first wisdom tooth out, because I'd never had a tooth pulled before. I had a bad reaction to the pain medication right after and ended up throwing up when I got home, which of course dislodged the gauze. I spent a week and a half in constant nerve pain because I was dumb and just assumed it was part of the healing process until it got so bad I knew something wasn't right. At least the dentist was able to fix it up pretty quickly. Never again, man. Appendicitis? I second this. Mine ruptured, nearly killing me. I developed peritonitis, I became septic, caught a staph infection, then became anemic. I was in the hospital for a while. Mine ruptured and exploded in me too. I was extremely lucky that it flared up ahead of doing so to the point of needing to come out, so I was in hospital when it exploded. The pain of it flaring was unbearable, but oddly enough it exploding wasn't too bad. It was a strange aching pain across my shoulders, and when standing up to go to the loo, I told the nurse that I'm likely going to pass out before I made it, which for someone my age and fitness was a big red flag. They had to rush a surgeon in on his day off to operate. The doctor told me that I was extremely lucky I was in hospital at the time and they recognized the symptoms of it exploding when they did, as if it were at home I likely wouldn't have got into the hospital in time, and that would have been it. But the strangest sensation was when they took out the drainage tube from me. It came out the left-hand side of my abdomen, and I hadn't twigged that my appendix was on the right-hand side, so whereas I thought it was going to be a quick pop when they took it out, I was treated to feeling the fucking thing being dragged across my innards before coming out. It's probably the closest thing I'll feel to having my intestines pulled out from a small hole just short of that actually happening.